Hey guys, this is Max with Priority Bicycles. Today we're going to talk about a bikepacking trip that I recently took up past Woodstock, New York, up to Overlook Mountain. I went on the Priority 600 HXT. If you want to see how I packed the bike and set it up, you can check out the last video. We'll link to that in the description below. So let's start by talking a little bit about the history of me and this route. A long time ago, I did about a week-long bikepacking trip where I went from Poughkeepsie, New York, all the way up to Burlington, Vermont. This is kind of recreating night number one of that trip. The climb to the top of Overlook Mountain to camp at Echo Lake is epic, but it was extremely difficult. Last time I did it, I was simply on the wrong bike, and I ended up walking up most of the climb. So many years later, I just had this idea where I was like, I want to go back, kind of reconquer Overlook Mountain, have a great night of camping at Echo Lake, and then take a meandering way back through beautiful Minnewaska State Park. This is a route that I designed myself. I had a really good time designing the route. I used Ride with GPS as a resource, and on Ride with GPS, you can flip between different maps. So I spent a ton of time looking at topo maps, I looked at Google, I used Street View all the time, and what was really kind of magical about it was finding all these perfect roads and then eventually riding them and seeing them come to life after staring at them on the screen for so many weeks while I was planning. So, logistically, I went from New York City up to Poughkeepsie by train. I took the Metro North train, I hopped on at Harlem 125th Street and just kind of jam your bike in the back there wherever you can fit it or wherever the conductor will let you. You hop off the train and it's always that first pedal stroke that's really a sort of mixed feeling of scary and fun and like ready for adventure. So why am I trying the first day of this route again? Well, when I tried it for the first time many years ago, the big feature was Overlook Mountain. Overlook Mountain is over 5 miles long and over 2,600 feet of climbing, and a good portion of that is on some solid mountain bike terrain. It's really hard. When I tried it for the first time, I was on a gravel bike, and I was simply underbiked. I ended up walking up most of the climb. It was brutal. It was one of the most demoralizing days I've ever had on the bike. I walked for, I'm pretty sure, hours to get to the top. And when I got to the top, I had double leg cramps, and it was just a rough night. So I wanted to revisit this, but on the proper equipment that could handle it. That's part of why I chose the 600 HXT. I really wanted that 600% gear range, the suspension, and the wide tires to get me up that climb. So this year, when I did it, the bike performed awesome. I made it all the way up the climb. I didn't have to walk. It was extremely difficult. I thought coming back years later, more in shape and with a more capable bike, I was just gonna rip up it. I did not rip up it, but I did make it to the top, and that was an incredible feeling. At the top, there's a fire tower where you can look over the valley. It's absolutely incredible. So from there, I had to do a small partial descent to Echo Lake. I didn't really remember this part properly from last time, and it was a real rock garden descent. The 600 HXT was the right bike for this. This was some proper downhill mountain biking, and I really needed the full capabilities of this bike. It performed awesome, and once again, I was able to ride, I didn't have to walk down it, and I even had a lot of fun. So I had a great night of camping at Echo Lake, and in the morning, I woke up, kind of did that mini climb back out, and then I had to descend back down Overlook Mountain. So same route in the opposite direction, 5 miles, 2,600 feet down, lots of pitches of 12% and greater. This bike, once again, performed awesome. I needed those huge rotors. I needed the suspension fork. It was great. I even used the dropper post and got a little bit sendy with it. It was fun. It was a blast. When I did this trip a long time ago, I was of the mentality of, let's choose the bike that's gonna be fastest. I also thought underbiking was kind of cool, where you're on, a gravel bike with 37 millimeter tires, flying along on the road, and then maybe doing some hike-a-bike later. Now, I kind of have the opposite view, and I want a bike that can take me down any road. I want a bike that can climb Overlook Mountain. I want a bike that can descend the rock garden to camp. I want a bike that I can then go down the mountain to coffee with. And the 600 HXT does all of that. I really did need a hardtail mountain bike for this. It felt so capable. And I'm so excited to go on more adventures with this bike where I never have to say no to any road or trail. Part of the bike's success on this trip was that I really set it up for my needs in this trip. That comes down to my aero bag setup It also comes down to my tire selection. If you checked out the bike check video, you saw that I put on the Continental Race King tires. They were definitely the right choice for this trip. They were much faster on the pavement and when I was on chill gravel, and they still had enough tread to handle the mountain bike terrain. If I was on the stock knobby tires, I definitely could have ripped the downhills a little bit harder, but we're trying to find that trade-off in that middle ground. I was really happy with my tire choice. As one side note, some people might ask questions about the Pinion Smart Shift and how it performed on this trip. Well, over the course of 2 days, I lost 1% on the battery. So that's pretty incredible, and I have a ton of confidence in the system. So as we discussed in the bike check video, the aero rack system and dry bags were new to me. This was my first experience with them, and I really actually enjoyed them a lot. I was a little bit unsure. I've been using the same bike packing bags for so many years, but I totally love these, and I will be using them on my future trips. They held so much stuff, they were super solid, they were really dependable, and they're really versatile. So I have another trip coming up, and I have a few small changes that I plan to make. The handlebars on the bike are a little bit wide for my frame, so I'm gonna cut them down just a little bit. I'm gonna try a smaller aero bag for my bar bag, just to see if I can get my pack size down a little bit. That's more just an experiment for myself that I'm interested in doing. In my gear check video, you saw me pull out my sleeping bag and say it's nothing special. Well, my next trip is to Vermont, and the seasons are changing, and I have some concerns about getting a little too cold. So I will be getting a new sleeping bag, and I can't wait to tell you guys about it. So as I mentioned, my next trip on the 600 HXT is going to be to Vermont for another overnighter. We'll do another debrief video on that. If you want to check out my journey with turning the 600 HXT into my perfect bikepacking bike, we'll have a video playlist below.